Welcome, everyone. I'm James Schaffer, managing partner of Schaffer&Combs, a strategy consultancy in San Francisco. This is the Truth Series, episode 2, a Transformers Foundation program. We're very excited today. Our topic is greenwashing, and I'm confident that by the end of the discussion, we'll be closer to the truth of the matter. Let's see if that happens. With me today is my colleague, Annie Wells, to tell us about our Q&A session at the end of the program. Annie?
Thanks, James. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We will be having a 10-minute question and answer period at the end of the webinar. So for any questions that you have for our experts, please type them in the Q&A, not the chat, and we will come back to them at the end. And so with that, James, I'll pass it back on over to you.
Thank you, Annie. We are very grateful to have 4 esteemed panelists with us to share their perspectives. Let's get everyone introduced and get underway. I'd like to start with Bart Van Son of Mud Jeans. Bart, welcome. Perhaps you could take 30 seconds to introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you. Proud to be here. My name is Bart Van Son. I started Mud Jeans 9 years ago. Being myself in the textile industry more than 35 years, I've seen it grow to something terrible, the fast fashion industry, which I did not want to be part of anymore, and decided to move completely to the other side and try to make a change. We'll do that with the jeans. It's the biggest item, and on the same time also the most polluting item. So I thought there's a lot to do, and we didn't only go for trying to improve workmanship, the way jeans are made, or the chemicals that you use, the cotton and everything, but also try to be responsible for the product into market and get it back after use. That's where we started with Lisa Jeans.
Yep, we will hear lots more about that today. Bart, we're thrilled that you're with us today. Thank you. Alden Wicker of EcoCult. Alden, we're thrilled to have you.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Alden. I am a freelance journalist based in New York, and I'm also the founder of EcoCult.com, which is one of the world's leading international information platforms. We also do shopping guides, but I also write for places like New York Times, Fox, just had something in W yesterday, basically any place that will let me write about sustainable fashion. And I'm very focused on figuring out what is actually going on in the fashion industry, not just what everyone says is going on in the fashion industry. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we match that sentiment, and it's great to have you part of this panel. Matther Sexton of Futerra, thanks so much for making time for this, Matt. It's great to have you.
Hi guys, so yeah, I'm Matther Sexton, who work for Futerra, the global change agency. We are a business that works on sustainability strategy and communications. So greenwashing is a topic that's very, very pertinent to us. We want businesses to come up with bold actions and bold commitments, and then we want them to talk about them. What we don't want them doing is coming up with wonderful communications and not having that underpinned by real commitment to change and tangible actions to achieve it. So yeah, I guess we have a foot in both camps, and we published in the past guides to greenwashing a long time ago now, but I was just digging it out ahead of this session and looking at it, and it still feels pretty relevant. So very nice to talk to you all today.
So great to have you, Matt. Can't wait to dig into some of those themes. Rich Tobin of Kaltex, thanks so much for being here, Rich. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, and been in the textile industry for 28 plus years. And the more I discovered the requirements and needs and necessities, sustainability, it became a passion. And it's just something that I've really been involved in for some time now. And here at Kaltex, I'm primarily focused on the marketing and sales end of it. And as mentioned, having tangible, real, hard numbers and goals attached with our initiatives and with what we say. So really happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Word tangible has been used twice in the last 3 minutes. I think that that's a great theme for today. Let's try to get to some really clear and tangible answers for our audience. So thank each of you for attending. We have a really interesting program today, and I want to compliment Transformers Foundation for making this a rich and engaging experience. We're going to have a number of short and provocative videos. In just a moment, we'll start with the first. This first one, I think, is going to get our minds in the right place. We'll engage our audiences, our panelists, and then we will go into subtopics over the next hour or so. So let's roll that video.
They tell me I can save the world. All I have to do is buy sustainable and fair products. But that is a lie.
Sustainability is a vital part of our strategy.
Nachhaltigkeit ist sexy.
Maximizing profits is the highest priority.
But all they care about is money. Money, money, money. Big, huge money.
The responsibility for sustainability is passed on to us, the consumers.
Ich verstehe mich auch nicht als Konsument. Ich bin ein Mensch und ein Bürger.
Catherine Hartmann is the top expert in greenwashing.
Es gibt kein nachhaltiges Palmöl, weil das nur da wächst, wo vorher Regenwald war.
Ich sehe hier Desaster und auf der anderen Seite schupfen wir irgendeine Schokolade rein und denken mir, ja, das eine hat mit dem anderen nichts zu tun. Ne?
Ini untuk membunuh masyarakat di Indonesia. I buy fair trade coffee because the alternative is what? Bastard coffee.
Everything is green, eh? This is also. Oh, this is even more green, eh?
In what way is it green? Is it organic?
This is less toxic. Das umweltfreundlichste Auto, das es gibt.
Das hat VW auch mal gesagt.
Du bist echt sowas wie eine Spielverderberin. Ja. Es ist schlecht. Es ist schlecht.
Nein, es ist nicht alles schlecht. Es ist immer dasselbe schlecht. Du siehst es nicht mehr. Das ist ja auch, warum die grünen Lügen so gut funktionieren.
It's by no means hopeless. Proposals may be worthwhile. Follow the proposal, but reject the propaganda.
Liebe Aktionäre, RWE ist schon heute grüner als viele denken.
Okay. Der bleibt stehen. Was? Ist doch ein schöner romantischer Ort.
Was machen wir jetzt?
My goodness, I think that video is an excellent introduction for us. How dare they? How dare they attack Tesla, the saviors of the world? So let's get into a topic that we call the 7 sins of greenwashing, and we're going to put them on screen here in just a second. As you can imagine, Transformers Foundation, I think, thinks nonstop about these sins, and it's part of their mission to educate and offset the negative effect of these sins in the marketplace. And our panelists are going to help us unpack that a little bit. These sins you can see on screen very quickly: the hidden trade-off, no proof, vagueness, irrelevance, the lesser of two evils, fibbing, also known as lying, worshiping false labels. I encourage each of you to Google these and learn about them if you're not already familiar. Each of them could be worth their own webinar, but let's dig into some sub themes here. I want to start our session today by asking each of our panelists a very simple question. If you could summarize all the sins of greenwashing into just one thing, what would that be and why? Alden, I'd like to start with you and gain your perspective on that, and then we'll hear from each panelist.
Yeah, I think greenwashing is just using your marketing to tell a rosier picture of the impact that your products have on the world, so that to preserve your reputation, and so that consumers will buy more of your product relative to other less effective greenwashing campaigns out there that your competitors might be running.
I think we're off to a great start there. So take that narrative, which I think is sort of disingenuous marketing for gain. how would you put that in a word or two? How do you just like really condense that into one concept that is the overarching sin?
Well, I guess I'd have to say that it's disingenuous using the disingenuous sustainability marketing.
Good one. Good one. You ought to trademark that. That's a powerful phrase. Bert, why don't you jump in here? How do you think about the overarching sin of greenwashing? How do you summarize it?
Well, there's something good and something bad about it. The good thing is that big companies now feel the urge of talking about sustainability because consumers are asking for this. So they have to jump in and do something. The bad thing is that they jump in with an idea of, okay, I have to say something about sustainability and I'll just blurb something out and my consumers will like it and I'm back on track again. So that's the sad story, I would say.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of the easy way out.
I'm afraid so. And if your biggest thing is in your company is like in the movies, is make as much as possible money for the shareholder, then yeah, how can you be sustainable? I would say. Yeah. Of course, you have to make money and you have to be there next year and you have to invest in new things. But if it's on top of mind only to make as much as possible as quick as you can, then there's no way you can be sustainable, I would say.
Okay. Matt, you're in the business of storytelling and trying to tell true stories. How do you summarize the great sin of greenwashing? How do you put this into a singular perspective?
I think for us, we always, I think there's this need to balance giving people cause for optimism and inspiring them to do the right thing and make the right choices, whilst always being, rigorous and truthful and honest. And I can't remember what the line was about advertising having to be legal, decent, honest, and truthful, or whatever it was. But we do ourselves no service as an industry or as a world if we let the rhetoric run way ahead of the actions. And I think it's a really thought-provoking film. I think we did a report a year ago called The Honest Product. And what we found was consumers just wanted the truth about things, and then they could make the choices that they need to make. And I think that this is the problem. Every business seems to feel the need to imply that they're a flawless paragon of virtue, whereas actually quite often what consumers are saying, I don't expect perfection overnight. What I expect is for people to be honest with me and let me make my choices. And then as you get better, let me know. And I think this is the problem. People can't seem to reconcile being proud of what they've achieved whilst acknowledging that there's further to go. And actually being honest with consumers about the products they're buying. So as you said, having a go at Tesla. Now, look, I think Tesla are a wonderful company with the capacity to transform air quality and reduce carbon emissions. But we all know there are consequences to electric cars. I honestly think consumers can deal with this if we're honest with them about things and don't pretend to be perfect, is my sense.
So almost a sense of stop babying customers. It's a form of disrespect to not.
Yeah, it is a form of disrespect. I think they can deal with this. But I don't want to kill, optimistic, exciting claims. People need hope, but not false hope, and they don't need to be bullshitted to.
Right. Rich, a lot to sink your teeth in. I don't know if it's easiest to go last or hardest to go last. Take a stab at it.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's the beginning of a long journey. And so unfortunately, human nature is to take the path of least resistance for most. Very few choose to stand out and go against the status quo. But I think we have to. And I think that, greenwashing are false words that are hollow. If you're not really following a trail of traceability through all of your process and all of your raw material, then how can you be authentic? So if you're not willing to take that journey, which is associated with cost, and we all know everybody wants everything at cost neutral, it's just not realistic. So follow the money, see where it's sourced, and you can pretty much make your own conclusions with those two easy, checkable, and visible activities. It's not hard to see what's going on, but we do need to be truthful. We do need to take the first step, but we also need more people like Caring Group, who in 2015 did their own EP&L and published it and quantified and qualified their behavior. This is the type of truth that's required throughout the supply chain, not only with the mills, but also with the brands and the retailers. So it's a big step,
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, we need to tell the truth, but it's almost like you can't even do that if you're not investing heavily in traceability because you don't really have anything credible to say.
Correct.
Okay. Very interesting. A couple of words that I heard a few times, dishonesty, falsehood, getting to the truth, being truthful, etc. I think the backdrop to that is lying. One of the 7 sins is fibbing. I like the word lying because that's what it is. But I have, as we have probably a minute left here, quick reaction to this. Is it just brand marketers who are lying, or are we as consumers actually kind of lying to ourselves, almost like trying to make ourselves feel good? Or, oh, it says eco on it, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, you've got to do your due diligence, and I think we have to do a better a better job of storytelling and making the truth accessible to those who wish to move into the light, so to speak.
Yeah. Alden, do you think we lie to ourselves as consumers when we're shopping?
Sorry, my internet connection is a bit unstable. Was that question to me?
It was. I was just wondering, do you think that we as consumers lie to ourselves when we're shopping?
I don't think we lie to ourselves. I think a lot of consumers are doing the best they can. I mean, not everyone can be an expert on fashion, right? On anything. We have way too much information coming at us, and I think consumers have shown that if we can get quality information, we'll, some of us at least will make better decisions. The problem is that even if there are Carings out there that are releasing information on their environmental impact, there's no way to compare their environmental impact to any other environmental impact.
Fair point.
So I think that's the biggest problem, which is the fact that even we can't compare anything to anything because there's no standard measurement. So any brand can make a claim, even if the claim is true. Yeah. Even if the claim is that this jacket recycles or contains 8 recycled water bottles, compared to what? I mean, what is that good or bad?
Is that good or bad? So we're going to come back here in just a few minutes and talk about certifications and labels. That's a perfect tee up for that. In the meantime, we're off to a great start, by the way. I want to transition to our next topic, which is ignorance. We're going to start this off with another short video that I think really captures it. For our attendees, it may look like the video is fast forwarding. I assure you there's not a technical problem. It is fast forwarding. There's a lot here. We're trying to get you to the hot topics in the video. So sit back and engage with us for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. What would you do if you were in my situation? Just run to my car.
No. Okay, well, bye, Chloe. I gotta go. I'm on the set of my Pepsi commercial. I stopped the police from shooting black people by handing them a Pepsi. I know, it's cute, right?
I don't know if I should laugh or cry at that. I know we all have a few reactions, but I do want to take advantage of having Rich and Matt with us. Rich, as we as we talked in the introductions, it's hard to find someone with more of a multifaceted experience in the textile industry than you. And Matt, on the other hand, you are directing strategy for an organization charged with telling credible sustainability stories. So I want to start with your initial reactions to that video. Aside from the humor, what rings true in that video when it comes to the sustainability stories being told in the apparel industry? Rich, let's start with you and then I'll patch Matt in.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, my initial reaction to that is anger, frankly, because I do see the usage of iconic figures to feign interest in something, and so they're leveraging a moment, and you see it everywhere, and you see it all the time, and so at the end of the day, it's all about selling soda. And ironically, how much water does Pepsi use? And so, you know, again, behaviors don't change unless you change the remuneration to reflect the new required behavior. And so at the end of the day, it's about selling soda, and it's about returning, you know, equity to the shareholder. And so that in and of itself is problematic.
And Rich, no, I mean, name names if you want to, but do you see analogous things happening in the apparel industry, that sort of usage of things that consumers appeal to sort of glibly advertise some good effort?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think again, it's you know, is it a lack of knowledge, or is it just someone trying to turn a quick advantageous moment? I think, you know, the use of the word sustainability, I mean, in a very short period of time, it's become a genericized statement. And, you know, what is sustainability and what does it mean? So, you know, I see it. I don't think it's that egregious, frankly, but it is done. But again, you know, you've got to take that first step. And so a lot of people take that first step with not fully knowing what it's all about. So I can't really say I blame anyone, but we do need more awareness. And just a comment to Alden, I think Alden, you know, at least one person, and that being Keurig, stepped out and took the chance. So in order to have a standard or a benchmark, somebody's got to have the guts to make that step. And so that's the point. It's not that it's be all or end all, but someone's got to take the step, just like we're calling out greenwashing here.
Yeah, yeah. Alden, you'll have a chance to come back to that topic when we get into certifications and labels and other approaches like that. But in the meantime, Matt, why don't you jump in here? Initial reactions, and are you seeing analogous behaviors in the apparel industry?
Yeah, well, first of all, I moved not to give a more festive appearance, but to get a better mobile phone signal. So apologies for that. Yeah, I mean, initial reactions. I mean, I have seen it before. It's a funny but incredibly thought-provoking film, you know, and I think there's you know, what Shakespeare said, poison in jest. You know, it makes a very serious point in a fun way, but it is a deadly serious point. I think generally, in terms of big brands having the capacity to inspire change, I think they can, but the lesson there is think it through and match your actions with your rhetoric and your output. And you know, if I look at not necessarily the apparel industry, but if I look at we mentioned Tesla earlier on. Now, we can debate the merits of an electric car on well-to-wheel LCAs and all the rest of it, but the reality is, you know, they do dramatically improve local air quality. I think we all accept, and they can certainly run on renewable power, play a massive part in decarbonizing road transport. I genuinely believe that because of Tesla's inspiration and magic and brand fame, they did normalize and make attractive electric car driving. And I think that the other car companies are producing electric cars now, probably not because of European emission regulations, that's part of it, but probably because, frankly, Tesla have taken a huge chunk of market share by leading with sexy marketing. So, you know, but the key point is they're also coming at things with a radically different business model. They're doing something different. So I'm not against big, powerful brands driving mass behavior change. I think they can inspire people to do good. The question is, do you think it through? And clearly, you know, that film gave pretty interesting comment on how well through things are thought through. And so I think it's strewn with pitfalls. And the key thing is, if you're going to use your brand to talk about doing good or inspire people to do good, then it needs to be done from end to end, and you need to match words with actions and images with actions. In terms of the apparel industry, I mean, goodness, look at the, if we look at the fast, at the apparel industry in particular, we're seeing a lot of exciting technical developments around closed loop. We're seeing all sorts of commitments being made on these sort of getting what I will call closed loop ready, for example, to be able to, stimulate markets for recycled fibers, adopt circular design to make garments disassemblable. But ultimately, if we keep producing clothes in the volume that we do, and we don't find ways of getting those clothes reincorporated back into the closed loop, then we're never going to get there. So I think it comes down to one thing. It is that big brands can inspire and empower people to make a difference, but you've got to be rigorous in what you do, and you've got to think it through from end to end if you're going to deliver real change. And we're not there yet. We're a long way from it.
Thank you both. We have about 90 seconds left in the section, so 45 seconds each, please. Rich, you touched on something earlier I want to go a little bit deeper on. Do you think brands are actively leveraging the ignorance of their consumers to make a dollar? Or do you think it's more typical that they themselves are simply ignorant?
No, I mean, look, having been involved with them, there's a lot of smart people in the larger brands. From a marketing perspective, I think they're just trying to follow what they believe is truly a benevolent step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Knowing most of them and a lot of them being good friends of mine, I would have to say that's generally the case. But for sure, there's always an exception to that rule.
Great. Matt, when the exception is at play, when you see some egregious manipulation of the consumer consciousness, do you think a firm like yours has some sort of societal duty to speak up and stop your client from a particular type of messaging?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Futerra, we're on a mission to drive change. We don't stint in telling clients the truth. And we do that because, yes, we feel there's a moral obligation to ensure that people tell the truth about what they do. It's not in our clients' interest to have rhetoric and imagery run ahead of action. We founded the agency. We talk about logic and magic, and we say if you have logic and magic, then you can drive change. And so we always try and couple communications with a pressure test on what our clients are doing. And they normally receive it very well, I have to say. They seem to appreciate, we will always say, so I feel like I'm full of car analogies, but we always say we need to kick the tires. We have had examples when we said to people, we don't think we can communicate this. The plan's not strong enough. And what is interesting is a lot of them then come back and go, well, what would be strong enough? So yeah, I don't know whether I don't want to sort of say hold our clients to account or anything lofty like that. We always challenge our clients to go further. And when it comes to communications, we push them on the logic side of things because that's what they want.
I think Yeah, Matt, I think this gets us back to this concept of trust. And that's a segue into our next subtopic here. I think that similar to the title of this entire webinar series, the word trust kind of hovers over any conversation about the relationship between brands and consumers. I would say, actually, in recent years, there's a new word that is becoming a currency of trust, and that's transparency. And Alden, this is your entry back in the conversation. I'm really excited to have you on this topic because you're engaging with the industry from a pretty powerful vantage point. Of course, you're a journalist, but you're also a storyteller and a convener. More than 100,000 people a month engage with the EcoCult platform for sustainability information. I think, Alden, that there's actually a cynical view emerging that the transparency movement itself, so think about certifications, EP&Ls, labels, et cetera, can be hijacked and turned into greenwashing itself. I want to ask you, are you seeing this? And if so, what is the best way to protect the industry against that practice?
That's a good question. Well, yeah, I mean, there is a wide variety of certifications and labels. And I will say, in the absence of any government regulation at all around sustainability, around transparency, around marketing claims. Certifications are the best we have. Some are better than others. A lot of, I think they're starting to percolate down to the consumers a little bit, which is it's a little bit of what we try to do, right? We have an explainer on different certifications, what they mean. There are certain certifications that we look for. I know that Good On You looks for as well. That's an app that sort of ranks and rates different brands of all sizes. So certifications can summarize pretty neatly a certain aspect of sustainability. Some that come to mind are Blue Sign, Okotex, GOTS. So those are pretty good. The problem is that they're not foolproof, and there are a lot of labels that fair trade's another good one. There are a lot of labels that are not very good, that have questions about, whether they are free of, like how they're funded, right? Who has control over it. Some people mix up, MSIs, like industry groups, with certification. So ZDHC is not a certification. It is a voluntary industry group, but some people think it is. So they can get really confusing. And then some places just make up their own labels. Like if you buy anything at the grocery store, they have these little circles that say like plant-free or plant-based, vegan, all of these different things. And it's hard to tell which ones are good or not. But I think one good example of the power of a government issued certification that has very clear standards, and is very tightly controlled is the USDA organic label. And consumers have shown that they will pay more for a product if it has a very simple label that they can trust. Obviously, there are certain problems and criticisms of the USDA organic label, but consumers are interested in this. The problem is that people are always, they have these surveys coming out every month that say like consumers say that they will pay more for sustainable fashion. If you go up to a consumer and you say, or a person, a human, and say, would you pay more for a sustainable fashion that pays a fair wage so that people can feed themselves? They go, oh yes, absolutely. Right. And then they don't actually purchase it. Why? Because they don't know what sustainability is. They don't have any way to trust that a sustainability label is true. And then on top of that, they don't know what it's worth. How much do you pay? How much more should you pay for a product that's made from organic cotton?
Yeah. Very insightful, and it's going to be a great tee up for our conversation on regulations here in a few minutes. But in the meantime, Bart, I want to plug you into the conversation because it seems to me that you have been dedicating the last several years of your life and career to this issue of trust with your customers. I think that in many ways, Mud has been a model for other companies trying to figure out what circularity actually means. And I know you're continuing to work on it. Circularity or circular economy has become sort of a flashpoint for all discussions about transparency. Can you educate us about how you've navigated this forest of eco labels in the denim business and tried to cut through that with a unique business model with Mud?
That's a hard question. I'll try to make it short. Yeah, the thing is, when you start making a product, and for us that's jeans, okay, it's easy to say we'll use organic cotton, we'll try to recycle, we try to pay the people well in the whole chain, and be transparent about it. That's interesting, and anybody can do this. We wanted to go one step further, and for two reasons. One is to say to the public, you think about the product you buy, and also think of the end of life. What happens to a pair of jeans when it's worn out? And we say we want to have it back. And that was 9 years ago, spectacular. So people really thought, they saw this change of mindset and change of using a product. And that goes for everything. And that's what I like about circularity, that you as a producer feel responsible and design a product in a way that one day it will come back to you and you have to do something intelligent with it. So that's without any saying or without any, it's not trust, it's just trying to be smart and trying to go to the next level and create a world that we and our children can live in. And to come back to all these labels, Of course, it's hard. You know, we can say today 1% of all cotton is produced organically, and we sell 3%. So somewhere something goes wrong. But I cannot pick every ball of cotton myself. I have to trust somebody. I have to ask. So we use GOTS there. And we saw it all go wrong for me with BCI, which I think was well meant, but in the end, that's not the way to go. The Better Cotton Initiative. Of course, it's a good idea, but it didn't work. GOTS is a good one, I think. What I like most is certifications that help you move forward. So they go somewhere. We had, for instance, the Fair Air Foundation go to our factory and came up with a whole report, and in the same time said, but you can do this and this and this for the future, try to improve. So that's, for me, is a good label that takes us and the world to the next level and say, you're doing it wrong now, or you're doing something well, but there can be improvement, go for this. And that's I feel, a good label. And that's why we like very much, for instance, B Corp. We are B Corp. The B Corp is not a label, it's an assessment. And you have to tell everything you do. You get a lot of questions and they will say, okay, there's improvement here. What's your promise? What do you promise us to do next year to make this better? In all fields, you know, humanity, chemicals, you can mention it. And I like that a lot. And also there you have to say in your statutes of your company, we are a B Corp, we are using our corporation, our company as a force for good. And that's what we stand for. And that's our aim. So yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you, Bert. And Alden, I want to ask you to close this section for us. What is a consumer supposed to do? I mean, I'm trying to buy a pair of jeans. I don't have 8 hours to do research. Like how do I get through this wilderness of labels and marketing and find the truth?
Well, you've teed me up for some self-promotion. I mean, we do shopping guides for popular categories on EcoCult, and we try to put a lot of time into them. We even just hired a fact checker to go over all of our recommendations. We had a spirited discussion about Gucci the other day. And so there's that, but also I really, I think the two places that I go at this point to get comparative data, right? Data you can compare is, I really like Fashion Revolution's Transparency Index. It's just one thing, but it's helpful for now. And then I do like Good On You also to, because they do go through in detail all of these brands. But I mean, like I said, until there's mandated sharing of standardized information, it's going to be really hard for customers to make the best choice. I try to make it quick and easy, but you know, we have to go back and revise things all the time with new information.
Well, let's talk about the opportunity to mandate things. Not a terribly popular concept here in the United States, but Matt, I want to throw you this one and see what you do with it. What responsibility do you think that governments in different parts of the world have to ensure that the claims on labels and certifications are actually true?
I think more than they do at the moment. I think that consumers, you know, we've heard again and again, it's a labyrinthine maze of claims that consumers are supposed to navigate, you know, all sorts of different comparisons, people calculating things different ways, people selectively quoting statistics, all of this sort of stuff. And you know, just going back to an earlier point, I think consumers do want to make the right choice, but they're not getting the information they need at the moment. So I think consumers deserve consistency. And I also think that responsible companies should not fear sensible standardization and regulation. And this is not to tie people in reams of red tape, and this is to not stop people, it's not to stop people communicating. But I think that if, you know, when I used to work in-house, you know, what we wanted was a level playing field. Look, we will, you know, I used to work for Kingfisher. We put, we really stretched every sinew, for example, to get 100% FSC timber, and not just a bit of photocopy paper. You know, this is in 16,000 of our 35,000 products. But you know, with nobody else had to communicate their timber credentials, and if they did, then they did it in myriad different ways, which confused consumers. So what we wanted was a level playing field. We said, look, if everybody has to obey the same laws and everybody has to communicate the same way, then we can compete to give the consumer what they want. So I think that I don't want businesses to be bound up in red tape or deterred from communicating. It's not what I want at all. But I think that standardization and giving people information they can trust is the role of government, and I think they need to do more. And look, if there could be one, I mean, this thing can't exist because of the myriad sort of metrics involved, but if there could be one eco label, which I don't know, at 1 was this is trashing the planet, and at 10, this is a genuinely regenerative product with no downside, and that went on every product in the world, that might be useful. I can dream, but I think they can and should do more, and that's not trying to stymie inventive communication that inspires, but it is about bringing consistency and truth to what is said.
I want to throw you a real softball now. I'm going to ask an Englishman to criticize America. You'll have fun with this. Why is this entire topic such a stretch of the imagination in the United States? I mean, I feel like you're infringing on my free speech right now. I can market whatever I want. Why is this so difficult for Americans?
Yeah, well, look, right now I sit here as the, the debate is raging about Brexit and what rules we want to, abide by. And that's a live debate at the moment. As an Englishman, I feel intensely reluctant to criticize anyone, so you can feel my pain. But I do think, look, we've seen in this year in the States, the notion of truth, really being challenged in a way in which we've never seen it being challenged before, frankly. Yeah. And I understand that this stuff is seen as being controlling and infringing the right to free speech. But free speech still has to be truthful, right? So therefore, you can say what you want as long as it's truthful. I think even the United States, should face into giving people what would one call it? Objective truth, and give them the means, the right to access that. There you go. Is that strong enough? That said, from an Englishman squirming as he's asked to make a criticism of a nation.
Can I jump in here? And it's
yeah,
not
I was just
actually
about to ask
defend.
you, what does your community think? Go for it.
So actually, America is quite capable of defending the truth in this sense. We have chosen not to do it for the past 4 years, but there was one instance of the FTC coming down on brands that marketed bamboo as eco-friendly because the material itself, the material input is eco-friendly. The process to turn it into a soft fabric is not always. Again, like this is, but then you start to get into some weird things because there's still a lot of eco-friendly bamboo stuff on the market. And when you ask them, they say, oh, we're Okotex certified, or our facility is Okotex certified, which I think means it's okay, but it gets really complicated. But I think the government is capable of doing something on this. And somebody rightly pointed out in the Q&A that Britain is sort of starting to look into this as well in terms of addressing greenwashing. But I think to undergird that greenwashing fight, we do need more data. And that is something that we are missing. We don't have good data. So I think underneath all this greenwashing, I have to say that like, it's hard to say what is greenwashing and what's not greenwashing because there's very few third-party researchers looking at this industry. It usually just comes from consulting firms, unfortunately.
Hey, don't knock on consulting firms. We're doing our best out here. I'm kidding. Rich and Bert, 1 minute each. Do you think that, which is the more powerful action against greenwashing? Is it government regulation, as Alden and Matt are talking about, or is it organized consumer action?
Yeah, if I can add on that, I think the government does play an important role here, and we need help from the government. The Dutch government luckily listens to us, but doesn't give us enough help, I think. To get back to America, if I may, you brought forward one of the best companies in the world in textiles, Patagonia, who also had the guts to do a fantastic ad, which I think has never been leveled. Don't buy this jacket. So you should be proud of yourself. I don't think there's a lot to say about America. But getting back to this level playing field, I like that a lot, Matt. And if you want to create a level playing field, you do need the help of a government. There has to be something, there has to come up. And I know they're trying. And in Holland, we have a very moving forward minister now who's trying to do something, but it's still not good enough. You know, she made a green deal with us saying, okay, from now on, in 5 years' time, I want denim suppliers to use at least 5% post-consumer waste in their products. I mean, that's not a target. That's just being silly. So it is there. They do realize they have to do something, but for me, it's not good enough.
Yeah. Rich, bring us home here.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it is government's role to be the adult in the room, if you will, because if we're left to our own demise and we're not regulated, we see where it gets us. And time and time again, you can see that throughout history. So I agree, there needs to be some unified, unilateral movement where we have a standard that we all march to. You know, it's very confusing if you're trying to understand all the different certifications that are out there and available, you know, some stronger than others. So, you know, until we get together as an industry, from the shelf to the weaver, to the cutter, to the sewer, to the laundry, and we all lock ourselves in a room and really roll up our sleeves and make a commitment to deliver the best possible standards to regulate and have government enforce them, you know, it's going to be a very unclear and unfocused message.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So many avenues we could run down here, but let's shift our attention now to responsibility, which is a concept I think we're tiptoeing around here. And let's point our finger in a different direction. I want us to engage once more with a short video on this topic. So let's roll that.
My Choice, which is an environmental NGO, identify what they call the 7 sins of greenwashing. And perhaps the most evident one is what they call the sin of hidden trade-off. When a company puts the emphasis on one environmental action which is relatively minor, but they hide or do not disclose the true impact that the process of providing a service or producing a product truly has. So the number of trademarks, including the word eco-friendly or green, has grown significantly. But at the same time, we have seen a growth in public awareness in terms of how people are truly concerned about the food they eat, the air they breathe, the water they drink. And this has become really a social movement. It has been crystallized in a higher number of environmental NGOs that are acting as watchdogs. For firms, I think the message is be careful about greenwashing because the consequences, both in terms of reputation and in economic terms, can be severe.
Rich, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the hidden trade-off. I think it's an easy thing to say that its use in greenwashing is pervasive. I'm not sure it's always rooted in egregious behavior. Maybe it's just rooted in ignorance. But it's very easy to lay that crime at the feet of brands. They're the ones who are underwriting advertising campaigns, et cetera. Do you think that's entirely fair? Who do you think is ultimately responsible for the existence of that type of greenwashing?
You know what? I mean, it depends on the culture of the company and really what's at its heart. But for sure, when pressure comes, people react in many different ways. And I think that, you know, people will reach for the easiest an obvious choice that doesn't necessarily take that much investment and or effort. And it's you know, the most obvious point in your perspective because change takes a lot of hard and sustained effort. And you have to be extremely brutally honest with yourself and truthful to yourself. So it's not easy, but I think we all have a responsibility. It's a collective responsibility. It's the consumer, it's the company, it's the manufacturers. We all have our hands in this. And so we all bear some of that burden, and we need to all realize that and move collectively. I mean, I think you're seeing it now with consumers. I think that if we educate them, to Alden's point, on what is truly green and thus benevolent for us all, and we have a unified standard that would allow for an icon that if we see it, we know it, that would go a long way in helping us really bring a lot of truth to the market space. But it's not an easy task. Changing habits are one of the most difficult things to do. So the pain has to be there. People generally don't change until they're in a lot of pain. And so I think if we look at the environment now, you'd have to be a fool to say that global warming is not a reality. It's a real reality. And we need to address it and move as quickly as possible to more sustainable behaviors, and in turn reward them financially, or we won't change.
You touched on collective responsibility. It occurs to me that some companies do their best to tell the truth, even when there's not collective pressure on them. But it doesn't really work pervasively across an entire value chain. You have to have everyone in the same pressurized system where there's incentive to tell the truth and disincentive to lie. And I think that's a really important point. It connects to Alden's point about multi-stakeholder initiatives, et cetera. But here's a question, and Bert, maybe you can weigh in here. What do you think is more powerful in our society? Collective responsibility or shareholder capitalism?
Yeah, that's the difference between family-owned companies and companies that are owned by shareholders. I think at the moment, what the reality is that companies that have shareholders that are looking for quick wins, they are pushing down to move forward, I'm afraid. And the human being is something that looks for a very short-term profit. It's very human. Whereas today we are looking at long-term problems that we have to solve. And we don't know how to solve them because we cannot get the whole community together, because there's still this need of very short-term interests and gains and things. So if that doesn't change, then it's very, very difficult. So we are working on that all together. And it is happening a little bit. And that's also why we started this company. There's many people thinking this way, but we are a long way from home, I'm afraid. And capital, money is still a very strong driver. And you've even seen that in your presidential campaign, I'm afraid, that many people see the short-term gains and they go for that. And you give a small promise and people are in. That's a shame. So yeah, that's not a good message. I know it's not what you want to hear, but that's.
It only took a small promise to get us excited about moving away from the past.
That's true. That's happening. Yeah, true. Yeah.
So Matt and Alden, let's plug you into this. How tempting is this sin of hidden trade-off? I think it's easy for observers like me to sit here and criticize that the brands are taking the easy way out or focusing on short-term profit. But I mean, think about the demands on a brand, particularly a smaller brand, like a $50 to $100 million brand who's just trying to turn a 10% net margin, which is a fabulous margin as a brand. How tempting is this? Matt, how do you counsel your clients?
I think it's hugely tempting because you want to stand out and you want to cut through. Sustainability is a means of doing that, and you want sustainability to be rewarded. And a lot of small or big brands, I think about with really good intention to say, look, I really am proud of this one thing we've done, and I want to maybe let people buy into it, and I want to gain some competitive advantages through it. And I think it's a very difficult balancing act to strike, because is it the case that you say nothing until everything is done? That's kind of tough, because then you are. It's like you will never get out there. And if I'm going to continue with the Tesla thread, would we rather Tesla hadn't got out there and made the electric car sexy and exciting, got millions of people to buy them? Because until they've resolved the issue of cobalt and lithium mining, until they've resolved the recyclability issues, they can't talk about it. No, I don't think we would. But those issues have to be solved. So I get why people do it. Do I have a remedy for it? I think what I'd say is, I think it's a question of degree. If you just have one eco claim and a slew of stuff which is really bad about your product, then I wouldn't get out there and say it. Or if you do, contextualize it and say, look, we've got this thing, it's great, but there's much more that we need to do. And I think, being honest on the look behind the label, which is, if you have a claim and you go, this is great, but if you want to learn more about it, then come to our website and be honest about what you're doing. That's one way of doing it. If you have a product, I don't know, if I look at, say, Oatly milk, a product with a very low environmental impact, a really great choice. As far as I'm aware, and Oatly, if I've traduced you, then don't get me wrong, it still comes in a multi-layer carton. Overall, that's still a great product. And I think that, saying we have this great product and we're working on the rest of it is fine. So I think it depends. It's a question of degree. If you've got a little tiny claim, I'd be very wary about making it without being honest about it. If you're majority good, get out there and be honest about the remaining steps you have to take. But I think the key, it comes back to this thing about being honest, present a balanced view. By all means claim the good, but also be honest about the bad.
We're going to jump to our next section, and then every single one of you is going to have time to weigh in. We'll start with Alden after what I think is a pretty provocative last video of the day. Please engage with us, and then we're going to close our conversation with your own closing comments.
We cannot continue to burn coal, gas, because we're facing a big climate crisis.
Can you help us with greenwashing?
En dan kom ik aan bij het pontje. Great travel hack. Hele pond onder de Shell.
Just last year, Shell was responsible for the emission of close to 700 million tons of carbon dioxide. In fact, their emissions even rose from 2017 to 2018. Shell is not green. They won't be anytime soon.
Wij zijn Extinction Rebellion. Wij staan hier vandaag om jullie wakker te schudden. Want iedere dag worden duizenden Amsterdammers misleid met deze nette campagne. De fossiele industrie onderdrukt en verwoedt leefgemeenschappen wereldwijd. Waarom krijgt Shell het podium om het imago groener te maken?
Trying to get green credentials whilst actually being part of the problem.
We want to highlight the fact that there's greenwashing going on with the COP25, and a lot of the companies that you see around here that say they're doing things for the environment are actually continuing to pollute and destroy the environment.
This has got a lot of support from people inside this green room. There's been a lot of discussion. About how could these companies be the ones that were funding.
On screen, we just watched a number of brave young people taking matters into their own hands and speaking up in protest. I continue to be amazed at the power of youth on the global scale to address the largest issues we faced, if only we would listen. This is just one example of taking action. I want to engage our panelists, and specifically, I want to ask each of you to think of yourself in a very powerful way. I want you to imagine that you are empowered to institute one bold action in commercial society that is intended to eliminate greenwashing forever. You don't have any magic powers beyond what's in your own minds and the resources that are generally available in society. But what would you do? What would that singular action be and why? And Alden, I want you to start us off here and share your thoughts, please.
Sure. I would probably bring every country together to have an actual agreement that anyone can sue a company in their own country's court for lying about their impact on the environment if they are in fact destroying the environment in some way in that country. So for example, Ecuador, somebody in Ecuador would be able to take one of the oil companies to court every time they have a green focused campaign, given the fact that there have been multiple oil spills there. So that's what I would do.
Wow, what
Make it a liability.
Great idea. You blew me away with that one. That's excellent. That's a tough act to follow. So Bert, why don't you try to follow that? What would be your single powerful action?
I have to congratulate Alden on this one. I cannot overdo this. I get emotional when I see this. And I've always learned to try to promote the good.
Yeah.
So I would say, give the ones that really try better, give them a podium. Give them the chance to reach all these people. We are unable to reach the world because we are small. We don't make the margins other companies make. So we have a difficulty of shouting out. So I would say, try to give the companies that are honestly doing a good job and trying to grow and try to do something different, give them a huge podium. And then it will work, I think.
Bert, before we move on, can you name a few people or brands or manufacturers who you think should be on that podium that are small but doing incredible things, but should have that global platform?
In the garment industry or
Sure. Let's keep it close to home here.
Okay, I was going to say Dopper and Tony Chocolonely and Fairphone. Okay. I wouldn't have a name now, but it's the companies that dare to invest in new products that are promising for the future, where the consumers can still have a nice product, still enjoy life, still have something good in hand, still look good, but without devastating results. I don't know today of a company in textiles who is doing. There's so many little ones trying really bad.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. I have to say, let me think about it.
I was at a major conference called Green Biz. Perhaps some of our attendees are familiar with it, a year ago, and they have an entire section of their conference that is exactly what you're talking about. It is mind-blowing sustainable technology in different industries. I think it's a wonderful idea you have. Matt, your turn, your powerful initiative to stop greenwashing forever.
I've got two. The second one is more closely linked to greenwashing. The first one is I think that taxation being linked to social value creation and environmental impact would be no bad thing in a meaningful way. The companies that do the right thing, paying less tax, those that don't paying more, could be fiscally neutral, could really work. Wouldn't necessarily tackle greenwashing, but I think that's something that could be done. On greenwashing, I'm going to come back to it. I think, Bert spoke about it, leveling the playing field. If we could waive them, I'm not saying this would be easy, but if we could have a means by which products and services could be objectively measured, maybe at a sectoral level, and people could have real access to a rating which said, on balance, I don't know, across 5 or 6 factors, this one is better than that one, not says the individual brand, but says some form of regulator, some sort of verifier. That way you can enable people to make comparable choices. And that way, that would still allow people to make all sorts of sexy upfront claims, but knowing that any hidden trade-offs will be exposed via a labeling system. That to me, and I think many businesses would welcome that as well.
Yes.
I hope our audience hears some recurring themes here. These are excellent ideas. I'm so pleased we have the right panelists here. And to that end, Rich, why don't you land us here? Let's hear your chance to save the world. We're waiting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and no, I totally agree with Matt. You know, there should be some form of taxation relative to a company's environmental footprint and impact, whether it be fast fashion or any other institution in our sector that's not behaving in a proper way. But I think more collaboration. I think we need some form of organization that allows the larger entities to couple together to solve circularity so that we can take commingled fiber product and, you know, either by solution, extract the lycra and the polyester to get back to the cellulosic fibers so that we can truly be circular in nature and expand a take back of garments and alleviate the stress on landfills. And I know we're close. The New Cotton Initiative, I believe in Amsterdam, is chasing this. I know that Titan Bioscience is chasing this. So I think we're close. And I think the next 3 to 5 years will really be exciting in terms of what we see in circularity. I think right now we're riding in a moment where there's a lot of first technologies where we're alleviating some of the stress, but it's not completely circular. So we need to take the second and third steps to close the loop. So I think some kind of organization that could facilitate the collaboration on the scale so that the investment in and of itself from a singular perspective is not so daunting. Because if we're all sharing our own dollar together, then our dollars stack up and become more powerful and alleviate the amount of investment required. I mean, we're riding in a supply chain that was built, you know, for what, the 20s, the 30s?
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, how much,
the best.
you know, we conceive to produce to a projection to what we think we're going to sell, and then we hope it sells, and then we mark it down or we get rid of it. I mean, it's just, you know, we need true on-demand manufacturing. And I think that the mills have gone a long way in alleviating the stresses on water. And I know people like Dye Star and such have brought alternative dye stuffs, as well as Officina 39 with alternatives for the laundry. So some kind of mechanization or organization to help facilitate the investment required.
Thank you, Rich. We're going to go right into Q&A, but I do want to summarize. I mean, just for the attendees, these are 5 things I heard. The ability to litigate in your local jurisdiction for egregious environmental or social violations, taxation connected to environmental and social behavior, a platform for the best and biggest ideas, even if they're coming from the smallest players, a single reference point for sustainability claims, and as Rich described, sort of next level collective action. I mean, you could build a movement on those 5 points. I think that's really exciting. It's time to move to our Q&A. So let me bring Annie in to help us facilitate that, and we'll connect questions to particular panelists.
Okay, so we had some amazing questions come in, a lot of hard ones that obviously could deserve their own webinar as well. But let's start on the subject of greenwashing and investment. So this question came from Marzia, and she quoted a Reuters article. The quote is, "The EU today is setting out a transparency framework to make sure that investors are well informed on the environmental and social impact of their investments." Her question is, what would it take to lobby for a legislative reform for our sector?
What a question, Marzia. Thank you for kicking us off. We might use the entire Q&A time for this. Bert, I'm going to throw that to you. What do you think? What do you think it would take to lobby for a unified transparency framework that is enforceable?
We have been lobbying for this already for 9 years now. I'm maybe not strong enough, but it is true that the financial world, we all have put our money in the pension funds and everything, so it's also our money. So they have to start also behaving like it's our money and not only on profit based. So I know they're working on it, but it's at small steps. But there's huge financials. There's a lot of money out there that should be used now for moving forward, and it is happening a little bit. So I'm hopeful, but there's a lot to gain there. Yes. So we there must be a regulation. Yes, in Europe or in the US, saying, guys, I don't know, you have to use so much of your wealth to put into new things and make things come alive because of financial help. You know, we struggle with finance. Every little startup struggles with finance. It's normal. And of course you have to have proof of concept and you have to go through the first steps, but you do need you do need financials to come somewhere.
Alden, I'd like your thoughts briefly on this, and then we're going to go to the next question. If we pursue this in the US, should we be coordinating with our colleagues in the EU, or is that a bad idea? We notice in the presidential debates, anytime the Green New Deal is mentioned, it's very unpopular. Everybody in America gets nervous for ridiculous reasons. So I pose that as the backdrop. Should we be coordinating with our EU colleagues?
Yeah, I think this is, well, the EU is so far ahead of the United States in so many different ways. That it's so easy just to say like, oh, well, maybe we should just all move to the EU if we want better environmental regulations. But I think to the finance question, like I think there's a push and a pull. Of course, investors. Somebody said earlier in this that it's human nature to want to maximize or to be into the short term, which is true, but it hasn't always been true for the corporate sector. I mean, this maximizing shareholder value is a new idea that came up in the 80s. Yeah, and we could reverse that. It would take a little bit, but it is possible to reverse that and perhaps get back to this time when if you were running a company, you were beholden to not just shareholders, but your employees. B Corp is attempted to do that in a voluntary way. The founder of B Corp has since said that it's not going to be enough. I mean, everybody should have to play by these rules where you keep in mind everyone who your business affects. So I think there's that. I think also the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is investment. Well, we have talked a little bit about investment. We need investment not only in these technologies, but also in research to undergird some of these things that, we said there should be standardized data. Well, not all the data should be coming from the companies themselves for obvious reasons. It should be coming from universities, which have done almost no research on all of these things. So you end up with competing privately produced reports that put the overall impact of the sector from anywhere from 4% to 10% of global climate emissions, which is a huge range. And that, you see that everywhere you look. So I think we need to reform the way investors and companies interact with the industry and what their incentives are. And we also need to put more investment into coming up with better numbers and technology at the same time.
Well put. Absolutely powerful point on the data piece in particular. Annie, what do we have next?
Next up, we have Peter, who says, I think we all agree there's a huge divide between the world of interested professionals and the consumer. Governments creating a level playing field is something that's not going to happen tomorrow. What could be created by the best in the industry tomorrow is an engaging platform that uses the power of video as well as a proper social and comms intersection to inform the audience. The B2B domain can take on its role as an engaging educator like no other when they work together. What's your take on this? And specifically, Alden, you as a journalist / storyteller, we're curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Alden, let's start with you. And then I want to bring Matt in as well for obvious reasons.
Sure. So I think what they might be describing a little bit, minus the video part, is basically what the Sustainable Apparel Coalition has been trying to do with the Higg Index. It's had limited impact so far. That could change when they get more and better data and they're a little bit clearer about what that data means. And then on top of that, they start putting it in front of consumers. A lot of problems, excuse me. And but I think that one thing that's really led a lot of us astray in the community is this idea that if we just educate the consumer will make the right choice. As we've seen, consumers have incentives. And so if we pretend that if they just have the right information, they'll start making the right choice, isn't really accurate. They might make the right choice if they have the right information, if they have the means and the funds and the time to make the right choice. And so all of these things have to come together. And I think that we've tried to sort of do an end run around government for the past 20 years. I mean, or for the past 10 years, there was the whole social entrepreneurism movement that came up. And I think it has a role to play. But I think that without leveling the playing field, a lot of these social entrepreneurs are realizing that they haven't really made a dent in the overall market. They've made an amazing product that people love. They've become thought leaders, and yet consumption and environmental damage continues to go up. So I think that I think it's been tried, and I think we need to try something else or shift our energies to campaigning as citizens instead of purchasing as consumers.
Thank you for that, Alden. Matt, we got to keep it short, maybe 1 minute. How do we make this, in the spirit of the question, how do we move this from a B2B echo chamber to something consumers actually care about and are educated to take action on?
Okay, 1 minute. So first of all, yeah, my sort of and doing this voice was more based on hope than expectation, but I live in hope. And we can't just expect consumers to make millions of different choices every day. You know, they're busy and they don't have time. I think in terms of the B2B stuff before, but ultimately at a sector of businesses to come together, to unite around a common set of goals or a common set of standards, which will ensure consumers getting a better offer, and then they can compete like fury on price and on marketing and everything else. But if what they can do is band together to make a singular promise in terms of standards, that can make a difference. And I think people have tried it, and I think it is possible, and I think ultimately the companies will welcome it. I'm very keen on getting a great pre-competitive space where people get aligned on something and then compete like fury outside that.
And that's interesting, Matt, because Alden alluded to the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And I think in its roots, that is intended to be a pre-competitive space. It's sort of an antitrust environment where an industry can come together and agree on how to measure itself. I think that's great, and we can all talk about the success or progress to go for the Higg Index. But how do we bridge that last mile? And I think those are interesting ideas that you've broached, Matt and Alden. We are out of time. I wish we had an hour to go with Q&A. I think it's a good idea if Annie can continue to curate those questions, and let's make connections with individual panelists with those questions that have come in. So thank you, panelists. Absolutely fascinating conversation. We really did get the right people, so we appreciate that so much. And thank you to our attendees for your engagement with this important topic. I encourage you all to keep pressing for the truth. Sure, hold companies accountable, hold governments accountable, but let's also hold ourselves accountable. Our next episode will be on January 12th in the new year. I'm very excited about the new year, time for something new. The topic will be cotton. Enough said. I guarantee you, coming from Transformers Foundation, this will be an unmissable program. With that, I'm James Schaffer. This has been a Transformers Foundation production of the Truth Series. Thank you very much and good day.
Thanks. And just to add, if you do, we had so many questions and we would love to get them answered. So if you could send them to communications@transformersfoundation.org, we will connect you with the best person to answer them. So thank you.
So long.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.